2 days before Grandma Ruth turned 90, my mother sent back the introduction I'd written for the family tribute with every sentence replaced. Under it she wrote, "Please use this version exactly as written." I called her and said, "I'll give the one I wrote, or you can give yours." She thought I was being ridiculous. The printed program already said family tribute, Emma, and Mom hated public speaking. She had not arranged anyone else to read her speech. "You're seriously refusing to read a speech?" Mom asked. "I'm refusing to read that one. It's about Grandma." "I know, mine is too." She made a frustrated sound and said hers was more appropriate for a 90th birthday. It thanked people who had helped with the party, mentioned Grandma's church friends, covered the major family milestones, and didn't leave anyone wondering why one branch of the family had been skipped. I said, "Then you should read it." "I don't want to stand up there reading 6 pages off paper. Then let me use mine." "No, yours is too casual. So those are the 2 options," I said. "Mine or you read yours." Mom said she would find somebody else and hung up before I could answer. About 20 minutes later, my cousin Lee texted me, "Did Aunt Linda just ask me to read a 6-minute speech at Grandma's party?" I told her yes, probably. Lee replied, I said no. "I hate microphones. Also, this sounds exactly like your mom." Then she added, "I can see why she wants all those people thanked though." That was pretty much where I was too. Mom's speech wasn't insulting. It wasn't full of lies. It was just unmistakably hers. A little later, Mom sent me a shorter version. She had cut a paragraph and asked if I would read it if she got it under 5 minutes. I wrote back, "It's not the length." She answered, "Then what is it?" I stared at that for a while because I didn't have a great explanation that didn't sound more dramatic than I felt. Finally, I wrote, "If you want those exact words said, you need to say them." She did not answer. Grandma and I had always been close, but not in a saintly grandmother way. She could argue for 10 minutes about what year a cousin got married and usually turn out to be right. When I moved into my first apartment, she showed up with groceries, paper towels, and a lamp because my living room was too dim to be healthy. During a rough stretch in my late 20s, she would call and ask if I had eaten, then ask what if I answered too quickly. That was closer to the grandma I had written about. That night, I opened Mom's shorter version on my phone and tried reading the first paragraph aloud in my kitchen. "Today we gather to honor the matriarch of our family and a lifetime of devotion to those she loves." I stopped. There was nothing offensive about it. I tried again, a little faster this time. It still sounded like somebody else talking through me, so I texted Mom, "I can add a quick thank you to you and everyone who organized the party. I'm fine with that." She answered, "That doesn't fix the rest of it." I asked what specifically she needed fixed. She said the tribute should acknowledge the whole family and sound consistent with the rest of the program. I left the conversation there for the night. I had spent about 6 weeks putting together the video that followed the introduction. Grandma's younger sister, an old friend, a former neighbor, a former coworker, and several relatives had sent clips. A few of the older contributors needed help getting their phones pointed the right way. The footage wasn't polished. One person had half his face cut off for most of his story. I edited it into about 10 minutes with old photos and a short family recording of Grandma laughing. My own introduction was only supposed to lead into that. It was personal because the video was personal. The next afternoon, I went to the community hall to test it. Mom was there with a box of place cards and a roll of tape around her wrist. She barely said hello before asking, "Are you really making me do this tomorrow?" "I'm not making you. I can still give mine." She shook her head. "Emma, yours doesn't even thank the people who organized the party. I told you I'd add that. That isn't the only issue." Mom had been worrying for weeks about the party feeling too loose. A 90th birthday felt important to her, and she was trying to make sure older relatives had rides, church friends had the correct address, and nobody important felt forgotten. I understood why she wanted control over the program. I still didn't want her sentences in my mouth. She asked, "What if I just give you the first page, the opening and the family part? You can do your own ending." For a second, I almost said yes. It would have solved the immediate problem. I was already going to be near the microphone. Grandma was turning 90. Reading a page I didn't love was not exactly a hardship, but the first page was the part that felt least like me. I had already tried it in my kitchen. I told Mom, I can't do the first page either. She pressed her lips together and went back to the place cards. I set up the laptop, checked the sound, and played the first 30 seconds of the video. Grandma's sister appeared from her kitchen and immediately started telling a story without introducing herself because she assumed everyone would know who she was. That was one of the reasons I had kept the video fairly loose instead of trying to turn it into something formal. Mom watched long enough to make sure the audio worked, then said the volume was fine. We did not talk about the speech again that afternoon. That evening, Mom texted me, "I'll do the speech. Please just make sure the video is ready to go right after." I wrote back, "I will." That mattered to me more than I expected. She was still annoyed, but she had stopped treating the video and the speech as one package. I did not have to pull anything away from Grandma to keep the boundary. Mom would say what she wanted to say. I would handle what I had actually made. The next morning I brought the laptop, the charger, and a small backup speaker because the hall system had been temperamental during the test. My aunt asked whether I was still doing the family tribute. The video, yes, Mom's doing the speech first. She glanced at Mom, who was rearranging place cards, then said, "Okay, I'll introduce her before you come up." There was no family meeting about it. The order just changed. Grandma arrived wearing a blue jacket she had complained was too dressy, until my aunt reminded her she had picked it herself. She spent the first half hour greeting people one at a time, instead of sitting where Mom wanted her. When somebody tried to take a third photo of her near the cake, she said, "You already got my face. It hasn't changed." Then she asked when lunch was being served. Watching her made the speech argument feel both sillier and clearer to me. I did not want the party to become about me and Mom. I also did not want to stand up and pretend words were mine because it was more convenient. About 15 minutes before the tribute, Mom came over holding the printed pages. She asked quietly, "Last chance." "Are you sure?" I looked at the pages. I was still tempted, then I said, "Yeah, I'm sure." Mom nodded once. When the tribute slot came, the program still had my name on it because those had been printed days earlier. Mom walked to the microphone and said, "I was originally going to make Emma do this part, but apparently I have more to say than she does." A few people laughed because it sounded like her. Then she read her speech. She was nervous. She spoke faster than usual, lost her place once, and skipped a paragraph after she realized how long the pages felt in her hands. But she got through it. And because the words were hers, they sounded better coming from her than they ever would have coming from me. She thanked the relatives she wanted thanked. She talked about Grandma raising 3 children, working for years at a medical office, helping with grandchildren, and keeping track of everybody's birthdays. She mentioned the church ladies. She mentioned my aunt's work on the party. Grandma listened with the expression she used when people were making a fuss, and she had decided to tolerate it. When Mom finished, 2 of Grandma's church friends stopped her before she could sit down and told her they liked what she had said about the people who kept checking on Grandma over the years. Mom thanked them, still holding the folded pages. Then she handed me the microphone without saying anything. I didn't give my original introduction. By then, it would have been strange to add another speech before the video. I just said, "We also have something from a few people who couldn't all be here today," and started it. Grandma laughed as soon as her sister appeared on screen. Halfway through, an old coworker told a story about Grandma getting locked out of the office in 1987. Grandma leaned toward me and said, not very quietly, "That was 1988. I said, "I'll tell her." Near the end, the old picnic clip played. Grandma watched herself laughing 20 years younger, then looked down at her hands for a few seconds. She wiped one eye and immediately asked who had found that recording. I told her I had. Afterward, people went back to cake and coffee. One of Grandma's friends asked if I had put the video together. I said yes. Then she asked if I could send her the part with the old office photos because she thought she was in one of them. That was about as much attention as I wanted. Grandma hugged me before she left and told me the video was very nice, then added that I had used the wrong year under one photograph. She was right again. Mom and I didn't talk about the speech until we were carrying empty boxes toward her car. She said, "I still don't understand why you couldn't just read it." I said, "Because you wrote it. I was trying to make sure everyone was included." "I know." She put a box in the trunk and stood there for a second. Then she said, "I guess I thought since you were the one speaking, I could just give you what needed to be said." I said, "That was the problem." She didn't apologize, I didn't ask her to. A couple of months later, Mom was helping plan a small anniversary dinner for my aunt and uncle. She texted me because somebody had suggested I give the toast. Her message said, "I have 3 things I think should be mentioned. Do you want me to send you the points and you write it, or would you rather I give the toast?" I read it twice. Then I wrote back, "Send me the points, I'll write it." She answered, "Okay."